The two members of royalty known as the mysterious princes in the Tower were Edward, Prince of Wales, and his younger brother Richard, Duke of York. The prince and duke were 12 and 9 years old, respectively, when their father, King Edward IV, died suddenly in 1483. His eldest son was to have become Edward V of England. However, the princes disappeared into the Tower of London and were never found again. This mystery shook England during the War of the Roses, and even today historians are still searching for answers. Edward IV was the first English king of the House of York. He managed to restore some stability to the country after the bloody civil wars known as the War of the Roses, during which the throne was briefly seized by the House of Lancaster. Although the House of York triumphed over their rivals and put their king back in power, tensions continued and succession was a complicated issue. After Edward's death, the eldest son was to assume the throne. The Princes in the Tower is a title used to designate the young King of England, Edward V, and his brother, Richard of Shrewsbury, Duke of York. Both were sons of Edward IV and Elizabeth Woodville. Their parents' marriage was controversial in England. Edward IV had married for love to a commoner instead of marrying a French princess, as was planned. In addition, the young woman was a widow and had 2 sons. Edward IV, father of the young princes, died on April 9, 1483, and his son, Edward, who was only 12 years old, became Edward V. Before he died, the boy's father left his brother, Richard of Gloucester, as regent, appointing him Lord Protector. Reportedly, young Edward was very fond of his previous protector, Thomas Woodville, Lord Rivers, and his mother's brother. The new king's maternal family, the Woodvilles, were considered ambitious and power-hungry. Richard took over the leadership of the anti-Woodville group. Being Lord Protector, he captured the young king, who was in the hands of his maternal uncle, Thomas Woodville. After obtaining custody of his nephew, Richard took him to the Tower of London, where, since the 14th century, monarchs traditionally spent the night before the coronation. Despite his later reputation as a formidable prison, the Tower was a luxurious royal residence. The young king suspected nothing when he and his brother were taken there. The two boys had no idea that they would play a key role in the Tower's dark reputation. After they entered there, they were never seen again. Nothing more was known about the young princes, as no one was allowed to stay connected with them. The people quickly suspected that the princes had been murdered by asphyxiation by the new king, Richard III. Since that moment, countless legends have arisen about the true fate of the young princes in the Tower. After taking custody of his nephews and locking them in the Tower, Richard declared that his brother's children were bastards. Edward IV, before he married Elizabeth Woodville, had entered a marriage contract with Eleanor Talbot, which made him a bigamist. The Parliament of England corroborated this version, declaring the princes in the Tower to be bastards and crowning Richard as Richard III, King of England. Some think that Richard III did not order the death of the princes. He just kept them hidden for the rest of their lives. Others believed that they had been killed by their uncle, a hypothesis reinforced by something that happened centuries later. Richard III reigned for a short time. He was defeated in 1485 by Henry Tudor, later crowned as Henry VII. It was not until 2012 that his remains were rediscovered in a supermarket parking lot in England. In life, his nasty reputation spread among his subjects. His image was eternalized by the renowned playwright William Shakespeare, who portrayed him as a despicable, unscrupulous man, capable of anything for power, even murdering his own nephews. Richard III's death was the end of the kings of York and Plantagenet dynasty, and nothing more was ever known about the 2 little nephews, the princes in the Tower. A long time later, in 1674, workmen found 2 small skeletons buried at the base of one of the tower's staircases. Charles II, the king at the time, accepted the widely proved theory that these were the bodies of the missing princes and buried them in Westminster Abbey. One of the reasons why Charles II was so certain that the skeletons belonged to the missing heirs was due to Sir Thomas More's book, entitled History of Richard III. In this famous, highly dramatized book, More claims that Richard allegedly ordered his 2 nephews to be murdered in their beds and the bodies buried near the staircase, increasing his control over the throne. But there is another suspect. Some historians argue that, if Richard's goal were to ensure that there were no legitimate rivals to the throne, he would have exposed the nephews' bodies to the public. Without any proof of their deaths, suitors for the crown continued to emerge. And the other suspect in the prince's murder was Henry VII. He had taken the throne by force, and his hold on the kingdom was much more tenuous than Richard's. He would spend his entire reign legitimatizing the new Tudor dynasty, obsessed with the importance of succession, an obsession that he would pass on to his son, Henry VIII. He certainly would not have allowed any threat to his family's claim, not even from two boys. There are many suspects in the murder case of the princes in the Tower, which occurred 5 centuries ago. But all those involved still precede the founding of America, and the mystery will probably not be unraveled. We must remember that no DNA testing has ever been done on the bones found in the Tower of London during the reign of Charles II. We have no evidence to assure us that these are the remains of the princes of the House of York. The prince's disappearance from the Tower remains a mystery, as does the person who ordered their deaths.